Return from the Abyss, Book 1. Chapter 8. The Hunt for Brutus. The sign outside the forge was simple, a hammer crossed with a sword, beneath which burned the words Steelheart's Forge in runic script that glowed faintly even in daylight. Kayden had walked past it 3 times in the last week, each time feeling his eyes drawn to the weapon displays in the window, blades that gleamed with a quality his bone sword, for all its effectiveness, couldn't match. Today, he stopped. The forge occupied a corner building in Greyhaven's crafts quarter, its thick stone walls designed to contain both heat and sound. Even from the street, Kayden could hear the rhythmic clang of hammer on anvil, feel the waves of heat that pulsed from the open doorway with each strike. He stepped inside. The interior was organized chaos. Weapons in various stages of completion lined the walls on wooden racks. Swords, axes, spears, daggers. Some were plain steel, functional, and brutally simple. Others bore intricate engravings, hilts wrapped in fine leather, pommels inlaid with semi-precious stones. The air tasted of hot metal, coal smoke, and oil. Behind a massive anvil stood the smith. Bargar Steelheart, a dwarf smith, was short, maybe 130 centimeters, but built like a boulder given humanoid form. His shoulders were broader than most humans by half, his arms corded with muscle that came from decades of swinging hammers that would break a normal man's wrists. A beard the color of iron gray fell to his waist, bound in 3 places with copper rings. His face was weathered, creased with age lines, but his eyes, dark brown and sharp as arrow points, missed nothing. He looked up as Kayden entered, his hammer pausing mid-strike. "Guild Hunter," he observed, his voice gravelly with age and smoke. "Frank Badge, new to the trade." His eyes dropped to the cloth-wrapped sword at Kayden's side. "But that weapon's not new, not guild-issued either. What can I do for you, boy?" Kayden unwrapped Bonefang slowly, laying the blade across the counter that separated the forge's front from its working area. "Want your opinion." Bargar set down his hammer and approached, wiping his hands on a leather apron that had seen decades of service. He picked up the sword with surprising gentleness, turning it this way and that, letting the light play across the bone-steel hybrid blade. His expression remained neutral, but something flickered in his eyes, professional interest, maybe surprise. "Huh," the dwarf grunted. He ran a thick finger along the edge, testing sharpness. Pressed his thumb against the flat of the blade, checking flexibility. Hefted the weapon, assessing balance. "This is your work?" "Yes." "The bone? Where'd you get material like this? I've worked monster bone before. Wyvern femurs, drake ribs, even had a piece of hydra spine once. But this?" He squinted at the blade more closely. "This is denser than any I've seen. Light as steel, but harder. Where's it from?" "Somewhere else," Kayden said. Not quite a lie. The Abyss was definitely somewhere else. Bargar snorted. "Cryptic bastard, aren't you?" But he didn't press. Smiths, like hunters, learned when to stop asking questions. "The craftsmanship is crude, no offense, but effective. You worked with what you had, made it functional. Whoever taught you the basics knew their stuff. No teacher, survival." Bargar set the sword down carefully. "I could improve this, a lot. The bone is exceptional material, but you've got no crossguard, the grip needs proper wrapping, and the edge, while sharp, isn't optimized. Give me a week with this blade. Let me forge a proper steel core and edge, wrap the bone around it for the structure and weight distribution." His eyes gleamed with the enthusiasm of a craftsman seeing a worthy challenge. "I could make you something legendary. Cost you 50 gold pieces for the work." Kayden had expected the number to be high, but hearing it still made him pause. He'd earned 30 gold total from his contract so far. He had maybe 12 left after paying for his room, food, and basic supplies. Don't have 50 gold, he admitted. Then you can't afford my work. Bargar turned back toward his anvil, clearly considering the conversation over. Is there another way? The dwarf paused, one hand on his hammer. He turned back, stroking his beard thoughtfully. Maybe. You heard of Brutus? No. Brutus the Stone Skin, troll living in the old quarry, about 50 kilometers northeast. Big bastard, 4 meters tall, skin like steel plate. Been there for 10 years, killing anyone stupid enough to wander into his territory. There's a guild contract for him, Class C, but most C-rank hunters won't take it because his hide's too tough. Weapons bounce off. Magic mostly slides around him. He regenerates fast enough that you need to kill him in one sustained assault, or he'll just heal and keep fighting. Kayden processed this information, his mind already cataloging the threat. What do you need from him? His hide. Bargar's eyes gleamed. Troll hide is good leather, tough, flexible. But Brutus's hide, after years of exposure to that quarry's particular stone composition, has developed properties I've never seen elsewhere. I get a piece of that hide, I can line sheaths with it, reinforce armor, create grips that won't slip even in blood. It's valuable material. You want me to kill Brutus, bring you the hide, in exchange for improving my sword? Sharp boy. Yes, that's the deal. You bring me Brutus's hide, the whole thing, undamaged, and I'll forge you the finest blade in Greyhaven. Fair trade. Kayden studied the dwarf's face, reading sincerity there. Bargar wasn't trying to cheat him. This was a legitimate trade, craftsmanship for monster parts. The kind of barter that made sense in a world where currency was less common than dead monsters. The contract is Class C, Kayden said. I'm F rank. So, you killed that giant rat in 10 seconds. Word spreads fast in the guild. Thorn himself told me you fight like someone with a decade of experience. Bargar crossed his arms. I'm not asking you to go alone. Take a team. But you're the one who brings me the hide. You're the one who gets the improved weapon. Deal? Kayden thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. Brutus was dangerous, significantly more dangerous than anything he'd fought since returning from the Abyss. But danger was relative. Compared to the things that had hunted him for 10 years, even a 4-meter troll with regeneration seemed manageable. Deal, he said. You want to fight a Class C troll? Fenn's voice climbed an octave. Kayden, that's suicide. We're E rank, barely E rank. Brutus has killed actual C-rank hunters, multiple C-rank hunters. They sat in the Rusted Dagger's common room, the 3 of them clustered around a corner table. Nara had been cleaning her axe when Kayden explained the situation. Now she'd stopped, the whetstone frozen against the blade, her sharp eyes fixed on him with an expression caught between disbelief and interest. Explain the troll's abilities again, Nara said, specifically. Immense strength, Kayden recited from the information Bargar had provided, can lift a ton easily. Skin is hard as steel plate, arrows bounce off, most swords can't penetrate. Regeneration heals significant wounds in minutes. Slow movement, low intelligence. Weak points are eyes, throat, joints, places where the skin is thinner. And you think the 3 of us can kill it? Nara's tone was flat, unreadable. Yes. Why? Kayden met her gaze. Because I've fought worse. Because you're strong enough to distract it. Because Fenn can heal if things go wrong. And because I can kill it if you give me an opening. That's a lot of confidence for someone who's been hunting professionally for less than a week, Nara observed. But there was no mockery in her voice, just assessment. I've been hunting for 10 years, Kayden corrected quietly, just not professionally. Silence fell over the table. Fenn fidgeted with his glasses. Nara continued to study Kayden's face, reading something there that made her slowly nod. The pay, she finally asked.
No pay. But I split anything valuable we find in the quarry 3 ways. And if we succeed, Bargar will owe us a favor. Dwarf smith favors are worth more than gold to hunters who want quality gear. That's actually not a bad point, Fen admitted reluctantly. I've been trying to commission a proper focus staff from him for months, but he keeps saying he's too busy. Nara set down her axe in whetstone. I'm in. You're... what? Fen stared at her. Nara, this is crazy. This is how hunters die. Hunters die doing easy contracts too, Nara said bluntly. At least this way, if I survive, I get something out of it, beyond a few gold pieces. Plus, she grinned, the expression fierce, I've always wanted to fight something really dangerous, test myself. Class C isn't S rank, but it's close enough to be exciting. You're both insane, Fen muttered.
Then, with a sigh that seemed to come from his soul, he added, "When do we leave?" The journey to the old quarry took 2 days on foot. They left Greyhaven at dawn, following the northeast road that served merchant caravans and travelers heading toward the border territories. The first day passed uneventfully. They made good time, the weather held, and they camped that night under clear stars that Kayden still found himself staring at for long minutes, marveling at their existence. The second day brought complications. They found the caravan around midday, maybe 10 kilometers from their destination. 3 wagons, surrounded by bodies. Kayden saw it first, his enhanced senses picking up the smell of blood on the wind. He raised a hand, stopping the group. Ahead, combat, recent. They approached cautiously, weapons ready. The scene revealed itself in ugly detail. 5 merchants lay dead or dying, their bodies scattered around overturned wagons. A woman clutched at a stomach wound, her breathing shallow and wet. An older man had been run through with a sword, the blade still protruding from his back. 2 younger men, guards probably, had fought and lost, their bodies hacked apart with the kind of vicious overkill that spoke of rage rather than efficiency. The bandits were still there. 7 of them, looting the wagons, tossing goods to the ground while searching for valuables. They wore mismatched armor, pieces stolen from previous victims probably, and carried weapons that ranged from proper swords to rusty clubs. Their leader, a scarred man with 1 eye and a cruel mouth, was rifling through a strongbox, his laughter carrying across the blood-stained ground. "Shit," Nara hissed. "We should..." Kayden was already moving. He covered the 30 meters between them and the bandits in seconds, his body low, his approach silent until the last moment when gravel crunched under his foot. The nearest bandit, a young man, maybe 20 years old with bad teeth and worse hygiene, turned just in time to see Bone Fang's blade open his throat. "Contact!" someone shouted. The bandits scattered, reaching for weapons, their earlier confidence evaporating as they realized they faced hunters rather than helpless merchants. But Kayden was already among them, his sword moving with the terrible efficiency of someone for whom killing was as natural as breathing. Second target, a heavy-set man with a mace. Kayden ducked under the wild swing, his blade finding the gap between the man's mismatched armor pieces, punching through the kidney. The bandit screamed and fell. Third target, a woman with a crossbow, already raising it, finger on the trigger. Kayden's throwing knife, acquired in Greyhaven specifically for situations like this, took her in the eye before she could fire. She dropped without a sound. Fourth and fifth targets tried to flank him, coordinating their approach with the skill of people who'd done this before. Kayden feinted left, drew both their attacks, then pivoted and killed the one on the right with a throat cut. The other's guard was open. Kayden's sword punched through his chest directly into the heart. 55 seconds, 5 dead. The remaining 2 bandits, including the leader, broke and ran. Nara caught one of them 20 meters down the road. Her axe took him between the shoulder blades with a throw that spoke of years of practice. The leader made it almost 50 meters before Kayden ran him down. The scarred man spun, sword raised in a desperate guard, eyes wild with fear. "Please," he gasped. "I've got gold. Take it. Just..."
Kayden's blade took his sword hand off at the wrist. The man screamed, collapsing. "You killed merchants," Kayden said, his voice completely flat, emotionless. "They were just—" Kayden killed him. Clean, quick, professional. Then he walked back to the wagons, where Fen was already kneeling beside the wounded woman, his hands glowing with weak green viral energy. "She's dying," Fen said, his voice thick with distress. "The wound is too deep. I don't have enough power to." "Do what you can," Nara said gently, her hand on Fen's shoulder. She looked at Kayden, her expression complicated. "That was efficient." "They deserved it," Kayden said simply. "Yeah," Nara agreed. "They did." The woman died despite Fen's efforts. They buried her with the others, marking the graves with stones. The surviving goods they loaded back onto one wagon. The bandits have scattered most of it, but there was still a considerable amount of trade goods and personal effects. In the strongbox, they found 30 gold pieces. "The merchants would have wanted their families to have this," Fen said quietly, holding the gold. "The merchants are dead," Nara countered. "We avenge them. We get the salvage. That's how this works." They split it 3 ways, 10 gold each. Kayden added his share to the 12 he already had, 22 total now. Still not enough for Barger's original price, but closer. They reached the old quarry by evening. The quarry was a wound in the earth, a crater maybe 200 meters across and 50 meters deep, carved by humans a century ago and then abandoned when the good stone ran out. The floor was littered with broken equipment, rusted tools, collapsed wooden structures. Water had pooled in the lowest sections, creating stagnant ponds that reflected the darkening sky like tarnished mirrors. And in the center, surrounded by a ring of broken stones arranged almost like a throne, sat Brutus. The troll was exactly as advertised, 4 meters of muscle and malice, his skin the color of wet stone and just as hard. Long arms hung to his knees, each hand large enough to crush a human skull like an egg. His head was disproportionately small for his body, dominated by a mouth full of yellow tusks that jutted up from the lower jaw. Small piggy eyes tracked their approach with an intelligence that was low but not absent. "That," Fen whispered, "is so much bigger than I thought it would be." "Stick to the plan," Nara said, her voice tight with tension. "I draw his attention. Fen heals anyone who gets hurt. Kayden finds the opening and takes it. On 3. 1, 2, 3. Nara charged, her war cry echoing off the quarry walls. Brutus rose from his stone throne with a roar that made Kayden's teeth ache, his massive fists coming up. Nara swung her axe with all her considerable strength, the blade impacting Brutus's forearm with a sound like a hammer on an anvil. The axe bounced off. Nara's eyes went wide. Shit! Brutus's backhand caught her across the chest, lifting her off her feet and sending her flying 3 meters. She hit the ground rolling, gasping for air, her armor dented inward. Fen! Green light flared as Fen channeled viral, healing the broken ribs before they could puncture Nara's lungs. But his face was pale, sweat already beading on his forehead from the effort. "Try the reverse," Nara shouted, struggling to her feet. "Drain him!" Fen's hands shifted, the green glow taking on a darker, more sickly hue as he attempted to invert his healing power, to drain life instead of giving it. The energy reached for Brutus, touched the troll's massive form, and did nothing. The troll had too much life, too much raw vitality. Fen's weak viral was like trying to empty an ocean with a teaspoon. Brutus advanced on Nara, his small eyes fixed on the warrior who dared to strike him. His massive fist rose, preparing to pulverize her into the stone. Kayden felt the familiar pulse in his palm. This time, he didn't wait for instinct. Didn't let the power decide when to manifest. He reached for it consciously, pulling on that reservoir of crimson energy the shard had left inside him. The sensation was like opening a door that had been rusted shut. Resistance, then sudden give. The scar on his palm erupted in scarlet light. Power flooded through Kayden's body, different from the brief flash he'd experienced with the Goblin Chieftain. This was fuller, deeper, like the difference between a candle and a bonfire. His veins lit up beneath his skin, scarlet lines spreading from his palm, up his arm, across his chest, down his legs. The world seemed to slow around him, not actually slowing, but his perception accelerating, his reflexes pushing beyond human limits. 30 seconds. He could feel the limit instinctively. This wasn't sustainable power. This was a burst, a sprint, not a marathon. He had to make it count. Kayden moved. His body crossed the 20 meters between him and Brutus in a heartbeat, speed that made Nara's jaw drop. Brutus began to turn, sensing the new threat, but he was too slow, far too slow compared to Kayden's crimson-enhanced velocity. The bone sword came alive in his hands. First stripe, Brutus's right eye, the blade punching through the weaker tissue, sinking deep. The troll roared, his massive hand coming up to protect his face. Kayden was already moving, flowing around the defensive gesture like water around stone. Second strike, the throat, targeting the gap where the skin was thinner. The blade bit deep, drawing dark blood. Not deep enough to kill, the troll's throat was still protected by thick muscle, but deep enough to hurt, to make Brutus stumble back. Third through 10th strikes, a blur of motion. Kayden's sword finding every weak point he could identify. The left eye, the inside of the elbow joint, behind the knee, the Achilles tendon, the base of the skull. Each cut was surgical, precise, calculated to disable rather than kill immediately. Brutus thrashed, his regeneration trying to seal the wounds even as Kayden opened new ones. But the troll was slow, predictable, his every movement telegraphed by shifts in weight and muscle tension that Kayden's enhanced senses read like books. 20 seconds gone, 10 remaining. Kayden focused on the throat wound, attacking it again and again, each strike going deeper. Bonefang's blade, sharpened to a monomolecular edge and driven by crimson-enhanced strength, finally punched through. The troll's roar cut off mid-sound, reduced to a wet gurgle. Dark blood fountained from the severed arteries. Brutus's hands came up to his throat in a futile attempt to stem the bleeding, but the wound was too large, too deep. Even his legendary regeneration couldn't keep pace. 5 seconds. Kayden delivered the killing blow, a vertical strike that entered through the base of the skull and severed the spine. Brutus's massive body went rigid, then collapsed, 4 meters and half a ton of troll crashing into the quarry floor with an impact that sent up a cloud of dust. The scarlet glow faded. Kayden staggered, the sudden absence of power leaving him feeling hollow, weak, wrung out like a cloth that had been twisted until dry. His legs threatened to give out. Only his sword, planted point first in the ground, kept him upright. "Holy shit," Nara breathed. She was staring at him, her eyes wide, her dented armor forgotten. What was that? What the hell was that? "Crimson," Kayden gasped. Speaking was hard. Everything was hard. His muscles felt like they'd been replaced with wet sand. "Energy," Fen stumbled forward, his weak viral channeling into Kayden without being asked, helping to ease the worst of the exhaustion. It wasn't much. Fen's healing was too weak to restore expended energy, but it helped. 30 seconds, Kayden managed. "That's my limit. 30 seconds, then it's gone." 30 seconds, Nara repeated. "You just killed a Class C troll in 30 seconds. She started laughing, the sound slightly hysterical. "We're all going to die following you, you know that? Because you make the impossible look easy, and we're going to start thinking we can do impossible things too." "Not impossible," Kayden said, his breathing gradually stabilizing. "Just difficult." It took them 2 hours to properly harvest Brutus's hide. The skin was as tough as advertised. It took Kayden's sharpest knife and all his strength to separate it from the underlying tissue. But they managed, rolling the massive hide into a bundle that weighed at least 50 kilos. They made camp in the quarry that night, too exhausted to travel. In the morning, they began the long trek back to Greyhaven, taking turns carrying the hide when the weight became too much for any one person. Bargar Steelheart's eyes gleamed when they dragged the bundle into his forge 3 days later. "You actually did it," the dwarf breathed, running his thick fingers over the hide's surface. "Perfect condition. No holes, no tears. This is exceptional work." "We had a deal," said Kayden. "Aye, we did." Bargar looked up at him, something like respect in his ancient eyes. "Come back in a week. I'll have your sword ready." 7 days later, Kayden returned to the forge alone. Bargar waited behind his counter, and laid across it was the most beautiful weapon Kayden had ever seen. The blade was still bone at its core. Kayden could see the familiar material through the translucent sections, but now it was wrapped in steel that had been folded and reforged so many times the metal seemed to ripple like water. The edge gleamed silver white, sharpened enough to split air. The grip had been rewrapped in leather so soft it felt like silk, over a core that fit his hand perfectly. A simple crossguard of blackened steel protected his fingers.
The balance was perfect. The sword felt weightless in his hand, an extension of his arm rather than a separate tool. "Bone Fang," Bargar said simply. "Reborn." The bone provides the structure, the flexibility, the resistance to breaking. The steel provides the edge, the sharpness, the ability to hold an edge even against armor. Together, he smiled, together there's something neither could be alone. Kayden lifted the sword, testing it with a few practice swings. The blade sang through the air, perfectly balanced, perfectly weighted. "It's perfect," he said quietly. "Aye," Bargar agreed. "It is. And now you owe me nothing, and I owe you nothing. Fair trade, honorably completed." Kayden nodded, sheathing the reborn Bonefang in a new scabbard Bargar had also provided, the interior lined with treated troll hide that protected the blade while making draws smooth as water. He walked out of the forge with a weapon that was no longer just a tool of survival. Now it was art.
Thank you for listening. New chapters will be released daily on the channel. This audio material was produced exclusively for the Section 56 channel. All rights reserved. Have a nice day.